Morning, everyone. It's just possible I did that a few seconds too early. Never mind. So today, I thought it's quite a weird week this week because, as expected, it's very quiet. This is the quiet before the calm before the storm. Parliament returns next week. We've had this very funny August, which began. It began oh, by the way, yes, I'm not Graham. Sorry, it's Monday. I forgot it's Monday. Normally it'd be Graham. Graham's busy gallivanting, so it'll be all completely changed. But I'm not wearing the hat today. But yeah, this we've had a strange August in that it's August anyway, so it's a bit quieter usually because Parliament's in recess. Um, Even the government obviously carries on being the government, but government ministers will still go on holiday and people go on holiday. And this is the quietest of all times because this is the bank holiday week. It's when, a lot of people do go on holiday before school starts up again, but also before Parliament starts up again. And yet we had this thing. So this morning I was, scanning through the front pages of the newspapers as I do, and browsing the news. And at the moment, in terms of like what you would say is the big domestic, there isn't really a big domestic news story politically, but if there was one at the moment, like right at this moment, it would be the winter fuel payments policy with Labour. There's a lot of gnashing of teeth with that, particularly in the media, who appeal quite a lot to elderly people. And then I saw this headline it was from James Cleverly, and he was saying, obviously you can expect the Tories to say, oh, we don't like this policy of taking away the winter fuel payments, which, remember, what they're actually doing is boosting winter fuel payments to literally the most vulnerable. I don't know why Labour aren't making more of that, but they are taking it away from most pensioners, right? They're means testing it. And it was James Cleverly comes out on the Daily Express today, the front page of the Daily Express, attacking it, and you go, okay, well, he's a Tory, you expect that. But he attacks it specifically on the basis that Labour have no mandate for it. And I thought, are you kidding me? No, actually, they do have a mandate for it. They do have a mandate for it, which I'll go over in a moment. However, in terms of Tories and their mandates, what about the Rwanda plan? What about the Rwanda? There's several examples I could say of how the Tories paid no attention to mandates. But the Rwanda plan is the best example because let's have a little look at this. Where have I got it? Have I deleted it? I've done something. Oh, for goodness sake. Oh no, it's here. There it is. So there's the Daily Express. It's a betrayal. Labour has no mandate to axe winter fuel payments. And it's like, this little thing by James Cleverly there is from the 2019 Conservative Party manifesto. So that's their public mandate. Everything that was in the 2019 Conservative Party manifesto, good and bad, they were deemed to have a mandate for. We could argue against them, but we couldn't really complain because they won a majority. So they're deemed to have a mandate. And one of the things in the manifesto was, we will continue to grant asylum and support to refugees fleeing persecution. That was in their manifesto. The Rwanda plan, as well as just generally their asylum policies in general that they legislated for. Remember, in the middle of 2022, they basically legislated to stop processing asylum claims. Completely stop processing any new asylum claims. So they broke their own manifesto promises. So they had no mandate for the Rwanda plan. The Rwanda plan obviously was not mentioned or anything like it. It's not even like a similar scheme was mentioned. They just didn't say where they would send people. No, there was nothing like it in the manifesto. There was no mention of like boat crossings because that had only just started by 2019. It wasn't seen as a big issue. It wasn't mentioned in there at all. So the Rwanda plan itself had no public mandate. There was not a single line in their manifesto that said they could do it. But more than that, it ran contrary to what it said they would do in their manifesto. And add on to it, it was hideously expensive. It broke domestic and international laws, as the Supreme Court made clear. In order for the government to even think about something like the Rwanda plan, it would have needed to gain a specific, explicit mandate in the form of a referendum, or more usually, you would just leave it until the following manifesto. If the Tories didn't have double standards, there'd be no standards. This one is quite incredible, though. It absolutely, because, and particularly coming from James Cleverly, if any Tory had said this, or if most other Tories had said it, I thought, well, this is just a bit of hypocrisy because you backed the Rwanda plan. Do you know another little bit of hypocrisy concerning the Rwanda plan? The Mirror reported an exclusive last night, so it'll be in today's Mirror, really, I suppose, in terms of the newspaper. So when the Tories were actually passing their Rwanda safety bill, which is the one that says, oh yeah, Rwanda's safe, because the Supreme Court's saying, yeah, Rwanda's not safe, mate. And the government said, well, we'll just legislate to say it's safe. While they were standing up and talking about how safe it was, the Foreign Office, so the government, were basically worried about the fact that Rwanda seemed to be at war with DRC. There was border skirmishes. There was like troops crossing back and forth across the border there. And they were a little bit concerned about the safety of particularly people, refugees who might be there. So at the same time, the government was saying, no, Rwanda's a completely safe place. Behind the scenes, the Foreign Office was worried about the fact that Rwanda was not remotely safe. Utter hypocrisy on every level. But then there were other things in the manifesto as well. Yeah, I'll read a few out. In fact, above and below that one. So where I've just put that, we'll continue to grant asylum. Shall we read a couple of other things that are on the same page? On the same page. We will boost English language teaching to empower existing migrants and help promote integration into society. How did that go then? Oh, they didn't do that? Good one. We will improve the quality and evidence of data within government about the types of barriers different groups face, ensuring that fairness is at the heart of everything we do. So in other words, there's a line in the manifesto there saying, there's certain groups, they don't specify who those groups are, but we know what groups they're talking about. We're talking about people based on ethnicity, based on gender, based on background, levels of poverty, things like that. But they say they're recognizing that people face barriers, different groups face barriers, and they're going to make sure that fairness is at the heart of everything they do. And then this is the same government, after putting that in their manifesto, that gets a report saying, oh yeah, there's a hell of a lot of racism in Britain. And Boris Johnson crosses it out and says, yeah, there's no racism in Britain. Where's another one? We will champion freedom of expression and tolerance, both in the UK and overseas. So what about all those bits in the Public Order Acts then, that basically say, oh, you can be arrested for you can be arrested for being a bit noisy. Be a bit noisy. Oh, we don't like Steve Bray. Oh, we don't like his freedom of expression. Yeah, he's a bit noisy. We'll legislate against being a bit noisy. It's absolutely insane. Insane. I wonder what would happen if Unpretty actually smiled instead of whatever that rictus grin is. Well, it is. She just smirks all the time, doesn't she? And yet, Priti Patel of late has been the one who seemed to be more the voice of reason of the leadership candidates. It's really bizarre. Do you know what? It's bizarre. I thought I'd be talking about the Tory leadership contest all summer, and yet I haven't, because other things have taken over. And actually, I'm going to have to say, it's been a bit quiet. I thought it would be wall-to-wall fighting. Kemi Badenoch, whenever she says something, it's really divisive. And she said something a couple of days ago as well. But it's utterly, what I did mock, I have to say, the 1922 committee when they introduced that yellow card idea. I don't know whether that did anything. But what I will say is, whatever they've done seems to have worked, because there's not really been any fireworks with the Tory leadership contest as yet, anyway, as yet. We'll see what happens when it all kicks off again next week. But incredible there. Alf, I think this is a reply to someone else, but I'll read it out anyway because it's still relevant. Not saying it isn't, but Labour won't be in power long enough to make a difference if they can't get any good press in the next 4 years and young people don't vote like the old. So the thing is, okay, so tomorrow apparently Keir Starmer is going to make a speech, and there's no apparently about it, in which he's going to say, oh yeah, things are absolutely terrible. The Tories have left the country in rubble and ruin, I think is his phrase. and things are going to get worse before they get better. So they're really laying it on for an unpopular budget, which I think is a little bit mad. Not the budget. The budget can be the budget, right? But there's plenty of good things in the budget that I just wish they would emphasise more. I mean, I know that they need to be able to say the Tories have left this massive mess and we're going to have to clean it up. But, you know, surely you can still emphasise some of the things. I mean, they've already done a lot of things. You've basically, because they're laying the groundwork for this, like, terrible budget, there's people go, oh, they're just going to carry on with austerity. And it's like, are you mad? They first of all raised public sector pay well above the level of inflation. They've... the winter fuel payments, yeah, you know, people will have different views. For my money, it's where the level is set. Because, like, if you're a millionaire pensioner, you don't need the 200 quid. But if you're someone like that old lady a few years ago who's having to ride the bus all day to keep warm because you couldn't afford to heat at home, they need it. But Labour are actually boosting the payments for the most vulnerable, and they're putting on a drive to make sure that people who aren't getting pension credit that qualify for it apply for it. So Labour can actually say they're boosting the incomes of the poorest pensioners this winter. But anyway, before I carry on that thought, I'll just go with there's 2 super chats thrown in. Maggie Pie, 20 Swedish krona, thank you. The Tories used to be more of a normal party, though. They did. I mean, they've always been the party of the billionaire, or, you know, before there was such thing as a billionaires, the very, very wealthy and privileged. They've always been the party of that. It's just that there have been times where they, since universal suffrage, should we say the Tory party have changed a lot during universal suffrage? They recognised that they needed the votes of ordinary people, and they used to do things. They used to build houses. You know, they did used to build houses. They did used to make sure that people had at least the, you know, a decent standard of living. Even though they did what they... It's like the Tory party have always done what they think is the bare minimum for ordinary people. It's just that what they thought was the bare minimum used to be a lot higher than it is now. But the Tory party, and this goes right back to David Cameron. As soon as they came in 2010, it was a fundamentally different Tory party to even Margaret Thatcher and John Major. They really have no concept at all of even... it's like they take these votes for granted. I saw a comment yesterday, like it's like the Tories they think they have this God-given right to govern. It's like it's some outrage, some terrible tragedy when they lose power, not because they won't be able to put not because they won't be able to do the things they want to do, but just because they are supposed to be the party of power. Anyway, Ivan Ambrose, 999 super chat, thank you. It says, the Tories can't even begin to work out the reasons for their worst election defeat in history. They've no mandate for us, and their attitude and breaking of their own rules. See, the thing is, well, they had a mandate. In 2019, they had a mandate. They didn't have one in 2017 because they didn't win a majority. You know, when you don't, although they got to form the government, it's always a bit, you know, what. So if you have a manifesto, it's deemed to be a public mandate if it wins a majority of seats in the House of Commons. That is, constitutionally, there are 2 ways to get a mandate in terms of the British Constitution. First is a referendum, which we don't do too often because it doesn't go very well. And the second is by presenting a manifesto that wins a majority of seats in Parliament, in House of Commons. So the Conservatives... So in 2017, they had no... Like, their manifesto, you wouldn't blame them for pursuing it, but it wasn't deemed to be a mandate because they didn't get a majority. But in 2019, they did, so it's a mandate. That's it. Everything in it was a mandate. Cesare, 499 super chat, thank you. Says, do you think this is Labour getting hard decisions out the way first? Oh, 100%. There's no thinking about it. That's clear. If you've got unpopular things to do, you do them early. And there's a few reasons for that. One of the reasons is, so sometimes a controversial policy, what people think will be bad about it isn't actually bad. They're just like, it's a bit of, you know, the media telling them something wrong, or, you know, you just have this idea that something terrible will result of it, and it doesn't. So by doing it early, you give that time by the next election for people to go, oh yeah, the sky didn't fall in after all. The other thing is sometimes a tough decision leads to better things later on. So if you're going to, so if Rachel, what Rachel Reeves is doing, and this is where it comes on to the mandate, in the Labour's manifesto. Hang on, is that right? What am I doing? I'm getting rid of something. Wrong. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, there it is. In terms of Labour's manifesto, they do have a line that gives them the mandate for this. Means testing of winter fuel payments, by the way. And but it's a commitment. In fact, I should have put it up earlier. Hold on, I did it for one of my videos on my own channel. Let me just find it while I'm here. Stick it there. There we go. So this is the line from the Labour manifesto. It says, our fiscal rules are non-negotiable and will apply to every decision taken by a Labour government. This means that the current budget must move into balance so that day-to-day costs are met by revenues and debt must be fallen as a share of the economy by fifth year of the forecast. Now, I don't subscribe to that view. There's lots of people on the left don't think that is the right way to approach budgeting at all. However, there's some of us who recognise that we're in a minority and that actually most people, and certainly key voters, do think that this is the right way to go in terms of economic policies and fiscal policies. And certainly what is undoubted is that Labour promised to do this. Labour absolutely promised to bring the budget into balance. So that means that Rachel Reeves had, even though the Tories had left this hole, and this hole that they hadn't even told anyone about, she has, if she wants to stick to the manifesto, she has to present a balanced budget. She can't say, well, we're going to start to bring it into balance, but they left us this £22 billion hole that we didn't even know about. She could try and say that, but that would be contrary to what she said in the manifesto. So they have to bring it into balance. That means raising taxes that the only taxes they promised not to raise were national insurance, income tax and VAT. Any other tax is free. And we're sort of getting the inkling that capital gains tax is going to go up. Something may happen with inheritance tax. There are already some taxes they promised to put up anyway. Then you've got cuts to go with it, because we know there are spending plans. You know, you've got GB Energy that's going ahead. The public sector pay, is billions of pounds extra. So there has been extra spending commitments. So what we've got here is, so you need then, you increase taxes and then you cut other things. And they're just like, and they've just said, well, we'll means test winter fuel payments. And this gives them the mandate to do it, because it says they have to bring the budget into balance. Well, how do you bring a budget into balance? A combination of raising taxes and cutting expenditure you think you don't need. So they've got all the things to do it there. Nick saying, what Rachel Reeves is doing is ignoring the enormous black hole as a result of being outside the EA and single market. Well, one or the other, make your mind up. EA, we could say, or single market, if you like. It's the same thing. Well, it's not quite, but it is sort of for our point of view. She is ignoring it. And there are good reasons to, because remember, what I keep saying is, and I do worry about people going on about, we should just rejoin the single market. It's like, when we can't at the moment. I actually think it's better that we try to get better access to it, so that when we can then go back into, hopefully just join the EU, that we're actually closer to it. But you are right that she is ignoring it. One thing I wish people would say to the government, instead of going, join the single market, because they can't. Instead, why don't we say, why isn't there an economic impact assessment into Brexit? Why not say that? Because there should be. There never was, and there should be. Why aren't we demanding that of the government? Say, because what we need is the public to get on board. At the moment, there's some people asking the government to do something that, first of all, we can't physically do. Like the EU would say no. But secondly, even if the EU wouldn't say no, our own, it's too divisive in this country. Change the public perception. How can we change the public perception? There are various things we could ask the government to do that I think are more practical. For example, with Brexit, say to the government, why isn't there shouldn't there be an economic impact assessment into a massive issue like Brexit? Of course there should. Indefensible to say not. And then there's another thing, I mentioned this on my stream on my own channel the other day. Like, if we're talking about energy, for example, so winter fuel payments is related to the fact that energy costs are going up and things like that. Why don't we make a stronger case against privatisation by persuading the government to force energy companies, like all companies could do the same thing actually, water companies, any private company that sends you a bill that's for a public service, in that bill have a breakdown. You know, like your council tax bill, and it breaks it down. For those of you who pay council tax, you may not be in this country, but for those in the UK and you pay council tax, and it breaks it down, it sort of says how much of your bill is going on to like the police and how much is going on to the fire service and various other, it breaks it down into areas. Why don't you do that for energy bills? So have energy bills broken down to how much of your energy bill is going on to staffing costs, which is all very fair. How much of it is going on to research and development? How much of it is going on to accommodation and other resources? And how much is going into profit? Have your energy bill broken down like that. Let people see the breakdown so they can see how much of their bill is being spent on profit. And then see how people treat the issue of privatisation. That's what I would do. Instead of banging on and saying to, oh, just nationalise it all. It's like, well, you can't because they'll lose the next election, right? If they nationalise it in the way you want them to, which is just massively load up debts to pay shareholders a very hefty sum for their shares, right? Instead, just break down the bill. And yeah, that includes how much is going to shareholders. I mean, that's what I mean by profit. And what goes to the shareholders is a part of the profits, right? So, you know, you have your necessary costs, staffing costs, and break down the necessary costs, staffing costs, accommodation costs, or the, you know, various things. And then profit. Just have the profit on there. Debt repayment. Actually, yeah, debt repayment could well be part of it as well. You could do that as a separate thing. Absolutely. But yeah, there are lots of things you could do. And I just think, you know, sometimes I think we need to be a bit smarter about the way we try to lobby governments to do things. Because some of the things that people want them to do are not realistic. And then you get nothing. Because if you ask a government to do something that it can't do, whether it because it's physically can't do it or it's just politically impossible because they'll just lose the next election, you're not achieving anything. Whereas if you can persuade the government to do something that actually it works towards the same goal, but like if there was a major call on the government, if there were like a lot of pressure on the government to, why don't you, in the interests of transparency, force companies who deliver public services to break down the cost of the bill into different areas? Why not do that? That doesn't hurt anyone. That doesn't hurt the government, does it? Why not do that in the interests of transparency? But no one ever does this, do they? They always go for the big thing. They try and lobby the government to do the big thing that's like way down the line instead of, should we plot out some little steps that will move us towards it? But anyway. Thames Water outright lies on their bill about how much the bill goes in interest payments. They claim it's something like 2%, when it's more like 40%. I mean, well, that's the other thing as well, because I don't know, obviously, I don't know what is in the Thames Water bill, because you get no choice. I mean, that's the other mad thing about water companies specifically, that this whole argument about, oh, we privatise it and then we get the free market, the competition in the free market will drive up standards and lower prices and all marvellous. And it's like, so you're going to get this thing that's better for less money. I mean, like, who falls for that con still? Who falls for that con ever? You know, whenever anyone promises to be able to deliver better for less, be a bit suspicious. You certainly want to look at the plan for this. And if the plan is, oh, competition, you see, it's like, what competition is there? For water companies especially, like, there isn't really any competition for energy companies, but there's the pretense of competition, because in theory you can change your energy company. Doesn't change, you know, there's no change in the electricity. It still comes from the national grid. It doesn't come from a different source. It comes down the same lines. It's all the same. Zero competition in energy, but there is the pretense of it. Water, there isn't even the pretense. Where I am, it's actually I don't even know. Is it Yorkshire Water? Then you've got Anglian Water. You've got Thames. It's all determined by your postcode. You go to a house, and your water company is selected for you. Ivan Ambrose, another 999 super chat. Thank you. It says my point in the previous super chat was not disputing the fact that the Tories won a mandate in 2019. However, just like the Rwanda plan did not have a mandate for Partygate in the mini budget. Well, Partygate was a slightly different thing because it required neither budgeting nor legislation or anything like that. That was just an action of the government. You know, the problem with Partygate is, first of all, it was illegal by their own laws, and second of all, then there was a cover-up. So those were the issues with Partygate, mostly. And then the mini budget, the mini budget. So that was a definite departure from. Again, if you do something that is like, you can do something that's not specifically mentioned in the manifesto. In fact, I made a lot of the fact before the election. Labour were making it clear. In fact, they said so explicitly. The manifesto is just like the bare minimum, that they intended to deliver more than the manifesto. So technically, they were already saying they were going to do things that weren't in the manifesto. That's fine. And you don't argue about public mandates when you do something extra. Where the mandate comes into it is a manifesto is basically a mixture of things you say you will do and things you say you will not do. So if you do something you said you wouldn't, then you don't have a mandate for that because you said you wouldn't, right? So, and if you say you will do something and then you don't do it, then again, you haven't got, you're failing in your mandate. So again, if I go back to wherever it was here, you know, we will continue to grant asylum and support refugees fleeing persecution. So what they didn't get to do, the Rwanda plan was dead against that, so they had no mandate for that. If there was like, let's say there was no mention of anything to do with asylum in the 2019 manifesto, and then they introduced the Rwanda plan. The main issue in terms of mandate there is the fact that it's illegal. So you would have needed a mandate to do something that's illegal. But if it wasn't illegal, and it was just a policy they introduced, and there was no mention of it in the manifesto, you would say it was okay, because they were just reacting to something. And governments are free, partway through a parliament, to go, okay, we've got this issue now, we're going to have to deal with it. We didn't really think about it for the manifesto. That's fine, as long as you're not contradicting the manifesto. But the reason why the Rwanda plan was such... The reason why this is just such hypocrisy for me, based on the Rwanda plan, this idea of, oh, Labour don't have a mandate to axe the winter fuel payments. Like, yes, they do. But also, the Rwanda plan is just like, on no level did they have a mandate for it. It wasn't mentioned in the manifesto. It specifically contradicts something that was said in the manifesto. And even if neither of those things were true, it's illegal. So then you'd have to change the law. But it's also against international law. So you'd have to change international law. And, you know, once you're into the process of trying to... Because then their reaction was, well, we'll just leave. We'll just, you know, disentangle ourselves from international laws. At that point, you do need a specific mandate. There's certain things you need a specific mandate for. You know. But anyway. When are Labour going to do something about the corrupt energy sector? Inflation just over 2%, but price will rise 10%. So that's not a fair assessment, by the way. So you say inflation just over 2%. It is. It's 2.3%, but prices rising 10%. Totally unjustified. Whether it's justified or not is another matter. You know, someone like me will always argue it's not because of that level of profit within the system. But inflation is more relevant there when it comes to like incomes. So, and also these price rises were already baked in before anyway. Although this specific level of them has been announced now, we're baked in. Some people have said, for example, oh, how can they rise so much above inflation? Inflation, remember, is more relevant when you're talking about incomes, because the expenditure adds to... Now, as it happens, this rise in energy bills won't add to CPI inflation, which is the headline inflation. It will add to core, though. But, for example, when people are talking about winter fuel payments, oh, you know, it's rising by 10%, inflation's 2.3%. It's like, well, first of all, inflation's 2.3% now. We don't know what inflation's going to be when this energy price is in. So you can't actually base the energy increase, the energy cost increase, on the rate of inflation, because you don't know what it is. 2.3 is the rate of inflation in the latest figures, which is actually from a couple of months ago, Whereas these energy prices come online from October. We don't know what the inflation's going to be for October until like December. And then we won't be sure until like January or February time. But the other thing is it's about incomes like pensions, for example, although the state pension is very poor compared to a lot of other European countries, it has actually gone up significantly above the level of inflation. The state pension, even under the Tories, rises above the level of inflation. Even though, I mean, another bit of hypocrisy here in terms of mandates, in 2019, the Conservatives promised to maintain the triple lock on the state pension. But they didn't. They broke it a couple of years in. So, they broke that one as well. But that's, that's what I would say there. It's like, the state pension has actually increased significantly above the level of inflation. So yes, there are pensioners who are struggling and they should carry on getting the winter fuel payment. And I think the main thing there would be not arguing against it being means tested. Because if you're arguing that it should remain universal, you're basically arguing that millionaire pensioners should keep getting it. Which is a weird one to argue. So really what the argument should be about is where's the level set. At the moment, the assumption is the level is set. If you get pension credit, you get the winter fuel payment. If you don't, you don't. Whereas people are suggesting, we're not sure that the level of pension credit, because remember, pension credit is set according to where the Tories think it should be. In fact, I'm just going to leave you with a couple of lines that Labour should 100% use against the Tories in Parliament, because they're inevitably going to be moaning about the winter fuel payments. In fact, Rishi Sunak will probably do it in PMQs next week. This is what I would respond back. I would first of all say three things. I would say, first of all, when you're talking about public mandates, what about the Rwanda plan? This went against your own manifesto. What about when you broke your promise to maintain the triple lock on pensions? And then you could move into, and also we promised to balance the budget. You've left this massive hole in the budget. We've now got to fill that hole. So why weren't you more honest about the public finances? And then what they could also say is they could actually someone just said Braverman standing for O'Brien. Oh my God. Again, she's done that before, hasn't she? Hasn't she done that before? But anyway, they could also just say something like, we're setting it so it's means tested based on whether people qualify for pension credit. If you wanted, and the level of pension credit was set by you guys, they could say that you're the ones who set this. You're the ones who set the criteria for being determined vulnerable, because that's what pension credit is. Pension credit is saying that you're in receipt of the state pension, but you are, due to various reasons, that is not enough. That's what pension credit means, that your pension isn't enough. And the Tories set that level. So by definition, I've got one more super chat apparently to go through that I've missed. I'll just go, that's fine. Let's scan through. Oh yeah, Maggie Pie, another 50 Swedish krona. It says the winter fuel payment should have been means tested all along. To someone who lives in Sweden, the fact they haven't is absolutely mad. Well, so the reason is political in this country, in that the Conservatives absolutely rely, I mean, they definitely do now, but they absolutely rely on pensioners for their votes. Labour less so, but pensioners are still a large voting bloc. They vote in large numbers as a proportion, and there's quite a lot of them. And they're going to be an increasingly important voting bloc as the retired population increases. So, they are, but they're not as important to Labour. Labour's target voters are people in their 40s and 50s, whereas for the Conservatives, it's very much people in their 60s and 70s. But there we go. But there we will leave it there anyway. But that's the line I would use those lines against him, and I would make the point is, we are making sure that actually the most vulnerable are getting these payments, and actually we're increasing these payments for many of those vulnerable. And who are the most vulnerable, we would like to review that in time, but at the moment we're having to use the level that you set after 14 years in power. Do that. But there we go. Thanks very much for coming on. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to the channel. Have a great day, and until next time, I will see you later.